Aesthetic features and analysis are some of the most important elements in your analytical essay. The ability to analyse the author's words and how they position readers makes up a large part of your mark and most of the third dimension criteria, that's the bottom one, and one of the dot points in your first dimension. Anywhere that you are being asked to analyse and evaluate comes back to your ability to write to the aesthetic features and the ways that they position audiences. Generally, within paragraphs, the ability to move from textual evidence to the operation and significance of that evidence in terms of the invited reading presents many students with difficulty. Common issues that we encounter include paraphrasing and retelling, so just telling us the what in other words, or leaving textual evidence to speak for itself, just giving us the what, and an undiscerning selection of evidence from the text, so your actual evidence or your what may be irrelevant to the so what, or it may just be irrelevant generally to your topic. You can cure all of these problems through simple language choices and discerning analysis that is specifically pointed out. Instead of listing ideas about the quotation after you have placed it into your paragraph, specifically say things like readers are positioned to understand XYZ, or the symbolic representation of XYZ, or through the use of, insert your aesthetic feature, readers are able to see XYZ. Making these clear and specific choices to point out the aesthetic features will allow you to ensure that you are not simply restating the quotation. But what are some of those aesthetic features that you can use, and what effect do they have on the reader? When you are looking for and identifying aesthetic features, it is good to have a point or response in the back of your mind that you can prove using these quotations, as the whole point of analysing them is to prove a point. Remember that your response for the crucible will revolve around community, integrity, and/or diabolism. The following is not a complete list of aesthetic features, as there are many other techniques, but it is a good place to start. First of all, we have repetition, which is simply the repetition of words for a specific effect, such as dramatic. With this example here, we can see that readers are positioned to see the importance of the word proof through its repetition, signifying the importance of this to Proctor and implying his incredulity at the lack of proof that actually exists to convict his wife. Another example is metaphor, or portraying a person or place, thing or an action as being something else. In this example, the metaphor relates to the nature of the Salem community and Puritan values. Hale's words show readers that the community believes so strongly in its moral and religious beliefs that it must be protected at all costs, meaning that any questionable violation of these rules was tried on a basis of guilty until proven innocent, as the crack or trespass could destroy the whole community. Another example such as dramatic irony, simile, personification, and imagery. We also have other examples of aesthetic features such as diction, or more specifically connotation. In this example, there are several connotations that can be analysed to look at both Abigail and John Proctor. Wintry has denotations of cold and iciness, but the connotations refer back to the heat between the two of them during the affair. The use of the word know also extends beyond knowing who Proctor is on a literal level, and the repetition positions readers again to see the importance of the connection between the two characters and Abigail's implication of the sin they committed, which becomes so important to Proctor. So what do we do once we know how to identify aesthetic features? Well, exactly that. The so what part of your paragraphs relate directly to your ability to analyse and evaluate the use of aesthetic features and what they make readers feel and understand about the idea that you put forward in your response and topic sentences. Let's have a look at an example in action here. You can see the topic sentence that we are trying to prove and the quotation. This quotation has been carefully selected to prove the topic sentence. It is relevant and discerning selection rather than just a quotation that is chosen because you can pull a whole bunch of aesthetic features out of it. Once you have your quotation, you can start to think, so what does this mean in relation to proving my topic sentence? And then start to write it down, as you can see here. Let's take a closer look at what we are doing though. To start our analysis, we need to make sure that we are explaining how the quotation proves the topic sentence as a whole. You can see that in the first sentence. Then we move to the first and most relevant aesthetic feature, which is the use of symbolism in the bell. We make that as clear as possible to our marker by specifically pointing out the word and the aesthetic feature, and then explaining what the symbolism represents. Make sure that you aren't just repeating the quotation though, you need to explain the symbolism. Then we move into the next aesthetic feature, which informs and supports our topic sentence. In this case, it is the irony of symbolism, as this helps readers to understand that Proctor's declaration to the whole church, or in this case, the authorities of, will ruin his reputation. but will save his wife and his integrity, which is how he is rewarded, thus proving our topic sentence. Next, we can move on to the other part of the quotation, which is the language choice of doom and the connotations that come with it. When you analyse this aesthetic feature, you need to actually point out the connotation. You can't just say that the word doom has connotations, you need to say what they are. You can phrase the sentence like this, or if you are really worried that the marker won't pick up on your aesthetic feature, you could say, his personal doom, which connotes religious ideas about destruction. As you can see though, the written version here is much more effective in this case. Once you have pulled out all of your aesthetic features though, you cannot just move on or repeat your topic sentence. You need to keep analysing to prove your point as clearly as possible. You can see that in the last sentence here. Notice that it is not a repetition or a segue sentence. It is in fact further and more detailed analysis to keep proving and explaining the so what. You can see that all of these elements are fully explained. There is no repetition of the quotation, nor has the writer left room for the marker to assume what they mean. We can only mark down what you put on paper, not what you imply, so you need to make sure that your analysis is clear and discerning. So what do we need to do to make sure that we are analysing properly? Firstly, you must have something to analyse and prove. This means that both your response and your topic sentence should be clear and something that you can prove through quotations. Then you need to choose the best quotations possible to prove your point. They obviously need to be relevant, helpful, detailed, and appropriate. Once you have this quotation, you need to look for as many aesthetic features as possible. What is the meaning beyond the literal? What is Miller trying to make you think or feel at this point in the play? Why and how does he do that through his language? After thinking about these questions, you should have your aesthetic features. If not, maybe go back a step and check that this is a discerning quotation choice. Finally, you need to explain your evidence clearly, ensuring that you are not restating the quotation, but instead explaining clearly how Miller is positioning audiences and why he is doing this. Remember that this should always relate back to your response and/or your topic sentence. Don't assume that your reader can work out what you mean. Imagine that the only thing in the world your reader knows is the plot of the play and the definitions of the aesthetic features. They are an expert in these, in fact, but they do not understand at all how Miller has created representations of the themes or how readers have been positioned to understand them. It is your job to teach this person that aspect, so you must explain in full and in detail in order to make sure that you are analysing and showing your understanding of aesthetic features properly.